I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying that I wasn't right, yet I was right by your side. You manipulator, playing games, your friends commentators, and I don't know what you say about our private conversations, but it's got them hating. Thanks to all the rumors you be claiming. It's cool, I'm done with you, so they can throw you a celebration. You gon' hate it when you see me with somebody living better. I'm trying to tell you that me just doing me gon' have you jealous.
Welcome back, folks, to the program. This is Chris live in Central Pennsylvania with my special guest today, none other than Jack Miller, leader of the Cape Independence Party. Jack was, rather colorfully removed from the Cape Town City Council meeting about a week ago. I think many of you may have seen that. So I asked him if he'd be interested in coming on. It's been over a week now, but he had a busy week traveling around, and so we postponed it until today. And, so we're going to talk about that and about all the shenanigans taking place in Cape Town, the Western Cape. Jack, welcome back to the program. It's been a while since you had you on, but you and I have chatted, and I've seen you in the meantime in South Africa in a previous visit, but we have not had a chance to chat for a while. How are things?
Chris, it's great. Always good to be with you. And pretty we missed you in Cape Town, but I look forward to having you over for a braai next time.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that. But I tell you, I get braaied out. Everyone's having me over for braais. I mean, I got to be careful. I wind up getting gout with all these braais, all that meat. No, but seriously. Hey, listen, Jack. So I think the last time I actually might have seen you was in the elections last year when the campaign was going. I'm trying to remember if I saw you in that visit, because I was in the Western Cape for that. I covered 14 polling stations on election day, and I was very fortunate to actually get my darn passport just in time, and I had to book a last-minute flight, and I got there the night before the election. So, and then, after that long flight over to South Africa, and then jumping ahead 6 hours and getting up a few hours later, and then running around to 14 polling stations was pretty incredible. But what an interesting election. You guys ran in that election, and I'm wondering... I'm sorry, you ran in the municipal election. Did you guys have a candidate in that election? I think you did.
No. So what happened was the IEC actually banned us
That's
from contesting
right. Yeah,
on a technicality. So we had more than enough signatures, but the portal in which we were submitting our signatures had a limit to how much you could upload. And we don't know if someone was throttling it on the other side there, or if there was some, malicious activity taking place. So as the deadline approached, we emailed all of our signatures through to them. And they basically said, no, we don't accept email. So they wrote us an email to say we don't accept email. So you can't contest the elections.
That's right. I've forgotten about that. That's right. Yeah, you guys were removed. You were competing in the election, but then you were removed. Yeah, that's thwarting democracy. What a bunch of nonsense. Look, I've dealt with the IEC before. I caught them, I won't say somebody doctored, but... This is in the municipal elections. You guys also had some issues. You took them to court, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, of the 2021 elections. But in the 2021 elections, the Forum for Democrats, a Tswana-based party in Zeerust in Northwest Province, was denied a seat and proportional representation because someone annotated 191 votes in one precinct for the EFF, not 19 votes. And so that knocked this party out. I got lawyers involved in non-government organizations. We sorted it out, and we wound up having that party get its seat eventually, which is pretty cool. You know what? I'm going to change my background before you respond to that, because you got that pretty cool looking blue background there, and mine doesn't look so sexy. So let's change that so we match up a little bit better. So not that. I want to do this here. Just a second there, Jack, before you get a chance to respond. I've got a blue background that's going to look good with your Cape flag there. There we go. How's that? That looks a lot better.
Nice.
All right.
That's ominous.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's a little ominous. It's the mist rising from the ocean there. But okay. So did you guys in fact have an issue in the 2021 municipal elections as well, as I recall?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. So basically, we won 2 seats, but the IEC said we only won 1 seat. We had a whole bunch of votes that went missing. They told us we had 0 votes in something like over 70 voting stations. Yet we knew that people and multiple people had voted for us in those stations. So we went through the arduous task of having to contact everyone on social media saying, listen, if you voted for us in this list of voting stations, please make contact, send us your ID, sign an affidavit saying you voted for us. We had to submit all of this documentation within a couple of days. I mean, it was absolutely unbelievable. I didn't sleep for 3 days through part of that event. And it dragged on for about 6-7 months of legal battles. We eventually won our court case. We got the recounts. They found thousands of votes more, and we were rightfully awarded our second seat.
Well, that's like the Forum for Democrats. That seems wholly unnecessary. What I've discovered, or at least my conclusion is based on experience with the IC, is that unless you're a big party that has lots of money behind it, they don't give a flying flip about you, and they don't care about errors. They'll just dismiss you out of hand and force you to spend your resources financially to get seats that you legitimately won. That was my experience.
Yeah, 100%.
All right,
100% right.
So Jack, let's turn to the elephant in the room. I mean, if the Zimbabweans haven't cut it apart and ate it already, apparently they're cutting elephants apart in Zimbabwe. But that's not a dig on Zimbabweans, that's a dig on ZANU-PF. But let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Oh wait, that might be a racist statement. People falsely equated a gorilla with something. Anyway, but let's. Jack, I understand that you in council recently were uttering racial slurs. Words that have been banned in the English language, things that we find repulsive and unacceptable. And at the risk of being banned on YouTube, I'm going to just say it. I mean, I heard you were accused of using the term economic migrants.
Whoa.
Oh, no.
Chris.
Oh.
You just dropped the N-word.
Oh.
You just dropped the N-word.
Was it the K word? Was it the N word? Was it the Z word? I don't know. Was it the Z word? I don't know. Economic migrants, gosh forbid. I saw the video of you being forcibly I mean, that was violent. I mean, as a elected member of council representing people. And Jack, before you recount it, if I understand correctly, and you could correct me on anything I got wrong on this, you were recounting concerns of residents in the city who contacted you, who were angry that people migrating from other parts of the country, particularly Eastern Cape, came over, rocked up, and jumped the queue to get housing provided by the city. What did I get wrong?
You got nothing wrong. It's literally that insane. I was giving a report from a community, and we've had multiple communities who raised this issue over the last 20 years saying, we as Cape Coloreds, under apartheid, we were second-class citizens. Now under the ANC and the DA, we are third-class citizens. There are economic migrants coming here from the Eastern Cape, and because of the ANC's Black Economic Empowerment and Employment Equity Act policies, just because these economic migrants are black, they get houses over and above our local Cape colored populations because their skin color is just not dark enough. And the ANC and the DA does the dirty work of the ANC. They allow this. So we were challenging the DA on this and saying that the community has a deep concern that, okay, first of all, the council meeting was discussing this new budget that the DA has tabled. This budget is the most socialist, insane budget you've ever seen. Our taxes and rates are going through the roof here in Cape Town. In some instances, there are households that are having their rates going up over 30%. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. So the middle classes are struggling. Businesses, entrepreneurs, the driving force behind the economy here in Cape Town cannot handle these taxes. The DA mayor has openly stated the reason they are increasing the rates and taxes so much is to provide services for the poorest of the poor, for the indigent, build low-cost housing, etc., all these sort of things. Here we have a community saying, okay, fine, so this low-cost housing project has been approved. Can we at least guarantee that those houses that are being built here are going to go to the people of Cape Town? So this was the statement that I was making. They had concerns about economic migrants from the Eastern Cape taking their houses, and stating this fact spun the EFF and the ANC into a hysterical spin, and the DA took the side of the EFF and the ANC and said that I must apologize for using the word migrant, as they had taken offense to this. And I obviously said to the speaker that it would be impossible for me to apologize something that is clearly defined in the English dictionary. There's nothing offensive about it. And more than that, it's an accurate depiction of what is happening in Cape Town and the Western Cape. So after stating that, the EFF and the ANC went into a further state of hysteria, started banging on tables, toying, charging out of their seats, and it turned into an absolute circus. And I think I was the only person in there who couldn't care less about this. But anyway, security came in, and I told the security this ruling I told the speaker that the ruling was incorrect. But that's fine. I'll accept the ruling as it was, and to give me space to pack up my valuables. And while I was packing up my valuables, for some reason they decided to commit assault and potentially crime and injuria. So that's what our lawyers are saying, that we've got a very strong case for physical assault and crime and injuria. So let's see what the city has to say.
Well, I've seen the video, and it's unprovoked. What's happened? You're removed by several people dragging you out of there. To me, it looks like a case of physical assault. There was no justification removing you from the chamber that I can see. And as far as criminal injuria, yeah, I think you have a case probably against the EFF clowns that were acting like fools and toying. But once again, the Democratic Alliance is letting down South Africans. Instead of standing up for what's right, moral, and just, they stand up for what's in their interest and not the interests of their residents of the town. So, I mean, I'm a little confused here, Jack. I thought you pay rates for service delivery, and that the national government is the competency that provides for human settlements funding to build housing. What have I missed there? Is there something wrong with that? Why are people paying for electricity that they're not getting sometimes, and paying for sewage and for water and for rubbish removal that's being used to build houses for people who are migrating into the region? What am I missing?
Okay, so there's multiple layers to it. It's a little bit complicated,
Okay.
And I've got some lovely numbers here. Well, I mean they're terrifying, but the audience might find them interesting. Just how much money we're paying. So the city of Cape Town pays taxes, the Western Cape pays taxes, and I'm going to give those numbers just now. But then on a local level, your sub-councils and your wards determine where there might be plots of land available for low-cost housing being built, etc. So it starts at the local level, it goes through to the provincial level, and then obviously the national government, which we have a massive problem with. We should not have housing in the Western Cape determined and dictated to us by the national government. However, on a sub-council level, on the local level, that is where the territories are kind of determined, the land areas are determined where housing might be put in. So this complaint came from an area in Somerset West, and it was about a plot that had been allocated and ring-fenced for low-cost housing. So it's not as if the municipal government, they're all working hand in hand. So let's go through some of these numbers here. And what I said to the mayor last week also was that he wouldn't have to raise rates and taxes if the DA confronted the ANC, took them to court, held referendums, took various measures to challenge them on the Division of Revenue Act. Literally, I'm going to go through these numbers now, and anyone who hasn't heard them is going to fall off their seat. These numbers are so mind-blowingly crazy that if we just got 1 or 2% more than what we're currently getting, he wouldn't even have to raise rates and taxes for Cape Town. In fact, he would have a bigger budget and he could reduce taxes. So let's go through these numbers. This year, 2025, the Western Cape's bad, Cape Town is even worse. The Western Cape is paying approximately 325 billion rand to the National Treasury. We get back on our provincial allocation and our municipal allocations a total of 65 billion and 8 billion, totaling 73 billion. We pay 325 billion, we get back direct access to 73 billion. That's 22%. It is mind-blowing. Now get a load of the city of Cape Town. The city of Cape Town accounts for 10% of South Africa's GDP. So you can deduce from that a total of 232 billion that the city of Cape Town is paying to the National Treasury. We get back 4.7 billion. We pay 232, we get back 4.7 billion. That's 2%. It is absolutely crazy. So we approached the DA and the city of Cape Town and said, listen, if you just challenge the ANC national government on our division of revenue, you wouldn't even need to increase rates and taxes. Never mind the other issue, which is how much housing and unemployment we have in Cape Town. So let's see, can we even afford economic migrants coming into Cape Town? Well, we have on the housing list here in Cape Town, we've got 350,000 people that are sitting homeless right here today. Cape Town is, not only are we full, we're so full, we have a housing backlog of 350,000, and we simply cannot afford. The taxpayer can't afford it, and our poorest of the poorest communities cannot afford it. We're already overburdened, and this is basically the facts that I was bringing to their attention, and the EFF and the ANC didn't like it.
Well, Jack, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. But one thing I'd like to say about all this, it's for those who don't know this, I knew about this issue with the funding, but I didn't know it was quite that stark, 73 to hundreds of billions. I knew it was quite a small return for what you actually pay in. But another problem with this, and I've made this argument since the late 1990s when the African National Congress eliminated hundreds of municipalities in creating these mega municipalities. So, for instance, to me, Gordons Bay is not Cape Town. But it is Cape Town. It's part of the Cape Town municipality. It's absolutely ludicrous. We're talking about 42 kilometers at least between Cape Town's boundaries and Gordons Bay, for example. This is a problem. Gordons Bay should be its own municipality with its own government. But the reason the ANC set this system up is they knew that, like in the Free State, if they incorporated small towns where smaller parties could win an outright majority and get the mayoralship and control the council, they could swap those in the massive numbers in cities like Bloemfontein or Johannesburg or Pretoria or Cape Town, and then they can control the councils. This has been the situation since the 1990s. I think the entire setup of municipalities in South Africa is a scam, and it fails to deliver services because it isn't. Listen, Gordons Bay is not local when you're in the central business district of Cape Town. If you're in Sea Point, if you're in Rondebosch, Gordons Bay is not Cape Town. They're not even remotely close, but they're in the same municipality, aren't they?
100% right. It's all about, I mean, we're dealing with communists here, aren't we? So these people, they want to centralize everything that they can possibly centralize. And we've got to bring the DA into this also. The DA has facilitated the centralization. I agree 100%. We should not have the greater city of Cape Town being as unmanageably big as it is. It's unsustainable, and you hit the nail on the head. And the reason is because these people are inherent bureaucrats, and they know that the most effective way to steal is to bunch as vast a territory as possible into the most centralized governing system as possible. The further the distance from the taxpayer and the local community to the administrative body, the further and the greater your opportunity for theft, for corruption, for a lack of accountability. That's what it is. It's a lack of accountability. So we're seeing this in Cape Town, we're seeing this in the Western Cape, and we're seeing it across South Africa. And that is why the Cape Independence Party, in our pathway towards achieving Cape independence, we are pushing as far as we can every opportunity we have to decentralize. We need to decentralize powers down to the local community, which is why when we were elected in 2021 into the council, our first proposal was to dissolve the 24 sub-councils down into a ward level. So you have more powers at the lowest possible level. And we almost won that. We actually almost beat the DA. We had tremendous support from the public. But they closed the public participation process as our numbers were getting to near up to break that 50%. And they just held the majority there. And unfortunately, we've got this very centralized system in Cape Town.
No, and that's the case all over the country, and it's a disaster. I mean, we look at Northwest Province. The province as a whole is in receivership, essentially. The national government has to run it because it's so inept. We see that in Port Elizabeth, which has become also one of these big, massive municipalities, Nelson Mandela Bay, that when the ANC was ruling a couple of years ago, they turned back something like 60 million rand, 62 million rand to the national government that they couldn't spend, money that was intended for infant and toddler feeding programs for the indigent. And 15 infants and toddlers starved to death after they gave the money back. I mean, this is what happens with these Soviet-esque bureaucracies, and that's what we're looking at, isn't it?
Yeah, that's absolutely what we're looking at. And that's why it's so important for voters to understand that their real enemy here is, yes, the ANC is the enemy. Yes, the EFF is the enemy. But I'm not someone that likes to point fingers to problems in the distance. I like to take responsibility for my own life, my own community. And I think that if we did that a lot more, we would solve these problems overnight. The problem here is the Western Cape government and the city of Cape Town. Now, as soon as Cape Town residents and Western Cape residents realize that and either knock the DA underneath 50% and put a party like ourselves or anyone else who's willing to hold the DA to account to give us that balance of power, we can then begin to challenge the DA on these issues. So the way the constitution is structured in South Africa premiers of provinces have the constitutional powers to call referendums. Now, if the DA wanted tomorrow, let's leave Cape Independence out of this, but if the DA wanted tomorrow, they could call referendums on housing, on education, on energy, on policing, etc., etc., etc. And if they did that, it would be, and we know we get 90% on these issues. If they did that, they would have a clear, direct mandate, policy by policy, that they could go to the national government and say, listen, 95% of the people of the Western Cape want to control their own police force. 95% of the people of the Western Cape want to control their own housing programs, etc., etc. But the DA doesn't do this. And when I raised this issue to the mayor last week, the answer that I got, specifically with the Division of Revenue, is that he said that if they were to do that, the people of Buffalo City, i.e. in the Eastern Cape, would lose out on the social benefits and freebies that they're getting. So I asked a point of clarity.
I'm sorry, Jack, I got to interrupt you here. What the fuck does the Buffalo City have to do with the residents of Cape Town? Mayor Jordan Hill Lewis is not the mayor of Buffalo City. If he wants to be, he should move to the Eastern Cape. He has a fiduciary and a moral responsibility to the residents and voters of Cape Town. Am I missing something?
You would think so. You would absolutely think so. So that's why I asked a follow-up question. I said, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like some clarity to understand your question properly. Is it correct that you're saying that you do not want to challenge the Division of Revenue Act because your concern is that the residents of Buffalo City would lose out on their social applications and the amount of revenue that they're getting from us in the city of Cape Town over and above the interests of Cape Town and Western Cape taxpayers? And his answer was quite simply that what he had said, they support the central-based tax system, and yes, he would not be challenging it because they care for all the people of South Africa.
Well, that's nice. I appreciate the care for all the people. I also care for all the people of South Africa, but I don't have a moral responsibility to answer to the residents and the taxpayers of Cape Town. Jordan Hill Lewis and the DA do. But on to the most important thing here, Jack. I mean, if there were to be Cape Independence, even short of Cape Independence, you know, with the collapse in the rand from what used to be 4 or 5 rand to the dollar when I lived in Botswana 15 years ago to almost 20 to 1 now, you know, I'm considering becoming an economic migrant to the Western Cape because I could live like a king. I'm a retirement check there. I mean, I could buy a big mansion and you know, in Gordon's Bay or, you know, well, not Hout Bay, it's kind of the birds, but maybe even, yeah, I could overlook and spy on the Simonstown Naval Base, you know. But I mean, you know, if I came as an economic migrant to South Africa, I think I do quite well. Jack Miller, would you welcome me as an economic migrant to South Africa?
You know, I did an interview the other day, and the key point that I raised there is there's a difference between people that are coming to contribute, to add to the benefits and the productivity of the Cape Town economy, and those who plan to be tax consumers. And so we welcome anyone from any part of South Africa, provided they want to be part of the Cape community, the Cape culture. They're there to add value as opposed to be a burden on what is already a heavily overburdened tax system. So we don't oppose migration into the Cape, but when we have unemployment sitting at 20%, and when we have unemployment, particularly in the Cape Flats, sitting at 30%, and when we have 350,000 people waiting on the housing list, we simply cannot have 351,000 people waiting on the housing list. We can't have unemployment going from 30 to 35%. So anyone that is willing to come to the Cape to help build our economy, to expand our productivity, they're more than welcome. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. It doesn't matter what your background is. You're welcome in Cape Town. But we literally cannot afford any more socialist welfare, tax-breaking burdens on the people of Cape Town and the Western Cape. We're at breaking point.
Well, it sounds like I'm welcome. Jack, ek praat nie Afrikaans nie. Is that going to be a problem?
Dis my tweede taal ook. No, that's not a problem at all. We want what we were promised in 1994. We want a true rainbow nation, and we believe we are the true rainbow nation. We believe that we were sold a dream that was, unfortunately, looking back, most likely a lie. If you look at the Tripartite Alliance, which makes up the ANC, COSATU, and SACP, I mean, the name SACP states it very clearly, the South African Communist Party. They have always had a communist agenda, and now after 3 decades, we're seeing them really turn the screws as they implement this communist agenda. We believe we can have a rainbow nation. We believe the Cape is a natural rainbow nation. We're the most ethnically diverse part of not just South Africa, but many places around the world. And we would abolish race policies. We would abolish any discriminatory policies. We believe in a system of merit. We believe in a system of first come, first serve. We obviously need to look after the Cape people first before we can start to look after other people. But that would purely be based on a charitable principle of first come and first serve. And once we've looked after all of our Cape people first, then we can begin to start taking care of others. But right now, that's not the case.
Well, Jack, you're not alone in this journey. There are other groups, not your political party, I think is the first political party founded on that basis, but you've also got some support from the Freedom Front Plus, who have talked about calling for a referendum, demanding it from the DA. Also, there are at least 3 groups that are known for an effort to call for a referendum. The United Liberty Alliance, which Hein Marks founded. And then you've got, of course, Capexit with Des Palm, and the Cape Independence Advocacy Group, Phil Craig, all of which are also moving to this. And Phil Craig also started the Referendum Party last year, which didn't do all that well in the election, unfortunately for them. But these are also groups that have gone out, particularly Capexit and ULA, and gotten hundreds of thousands of signatures of people who have an interest. But there's been a lot of pressure against these groups of late, threatening and trying to intimidate them. And it seems like they're having a more difficult time bringing people to the standard of Cape independence. Is that an accurate depiction of what's been going on in the past year or so?
Well, we've been having very good conversations with all of those different groups. We've had long relationships with all of them, and some parts of the journey have been a bit more turbulent, but I think everyone's at a point now where they all realize that we have to do what needs to be done to make sure that Cape independence happens. And I think some of those organizations have faced difficulties, and I think there are many different reasons for that. I think that there's a problem within the public perception and perhaps a sense of self-belief within the public. They would rather, and this goes back to the quote that Dr. Mario Ambrosini stated from Cyril Ramaphosa, and he's planned to boil the frogs alive slowly. And I think that voters need to wake up and realize they are the frogs being boiled alive slowly. And yes, you can vote DA and you can keep the status quo as it is because you fear alternatives that might be a little bit beyond what you consider to be normal. You might need to use your imagination a bit, but I think people need to start using their imaginations and tap into their childish spirit of excitement and ambition and potential and go, you're better than this. You don't need to live like this anymore. It's no one else's fault. You can't point your fingers at the ANC or the EFF. Yes, we know what they are. They've told us who they are. Let's not blame them any more than we need to. How about we take responsibility for ourselves? So support the civic movements pushing for Cape independence. Support us political movements pushing for Cape independence. We believe moving forward that both the civic and the political side is going to be working together much more closely. So we're very excited about that. And we need the public to support us. And we need the public to also put pressure on the status quo to say that you're not happy with the way things are. And if you want things to change, there's a number of things that we can do. So help us with putting together a people's referendum. Help us through donations. Help us by joining our organizations. Come to marches. Buy T-shirts. Buy caps. Talk to your friends about it at Bry's. And obviously, as we get closer to the elections, we'll need more and more support on the election side and manpower to man voting stations, and we'll need candidates. So obviously, we're putting calls out now. That's probably a year and a half to go to the elections, but we've begun already at the start of this year with our campaign project. So if people want to get involved, they really must get involved and spread the word. So I think that those difficulties that we've seen in the past have been because people have been too scared to take a leap. But we're only 1 year into this government of national unity, and I think it's becoming clear that all the cards that South Africa had to play, if you believed in Nelson Mandela's dream of a rainbow nation, this was pretty much your last card. If you're seeing things like the Bella Act, if you're seeing things like expropriation without compensation, if you're seeing more race laws, if you're seeing the way that the South African government completely ignores the genocide of white Afrikaans farmers and the horrific murders taking place, if we're living in that environment and you've got the DA as the number one partner in the national government, and under their watch, all of these laws have been passed in the last 12 months. I'm sorry, that final branch that you've been holding on to, that you think South Africa can make it through what we're on, that branch is in the process of snapping, and we need to take some serious decisions and some serious reflection. We've got the legal pathways to do it. Now everyone just needs to get up off their couches and back this issue and support Cape independence. And we know that if we have a referendum, we're going to win it. And then all of this comes to an end. It comes to an end overnight. Once we get 51% in that referendum, we can begin, all of us players in the Cape independence space, we can begin the legal process to implement declaring the Cape an independent country. There's going to be negotiations both with the national government. Obviously, we are going to negotiate and bring in international partners. As we know, I think there's a lot of international support for us now, especially after the last few months of attention that's been brought to us here in South Africa. So it's really up to the people of the Cape to take responsibility for their own lives and their grandchildren's lives and support Cape independence, because frankly, that's the only thing, that's the only hope we have to get out of this mess.
Well, we'll talk more about Cape independence. I do want to ask you a question about other parties and some of the smaller parties. But before I do that, I need to address at least one comment in the chat. Michael Holmes, who shows up occasionally, particularly in issues that tend to be race-related. This isn't a race-related issue, but he presumes that, and I know it based on his comment. Michael says, calling people migrants when there was a Bantustan Policy Influx Control Act passed laws which made Africans foreigners in the land of their birth is crazy business. No, it's not. Michael, what you need to do is, first off, is English not your first language? Migrant is not a derogatory term, okay? So if I move from Pennsylvania to Florida, I'm migrating. I'm moving. Like birds, they migrate from place to place. No one's claiming they're not endemic to a place because they migrated somewhere else in the wintertime. It's called migration. No one called people from the Eastern Cape immigrants. Well, maybe some people did, but they're not being called immigrants. An immigrant would be somebody that goes to another country. Then you could take offense. Then you could say that Africans are being said they're not residents of their own country. But if you take offense to migrant, you're just being an asshat. That's not a derogatory term. It's simply a statement of fact. Now, there is a term that people have been using that nobody has a problem with in South Africa, particularly explaining people going from Gauteng to the Western Cape. Semi-migration, they're calling it, which is a play on sometimes or partially an immigration. There's no such thing as semi-migration. There's relocation. There's migration from one part of South Africa to the other part. But nobody takes offense. Nobody's in council removing Jack Miller when someone says, semi-migration. It's everywhere. It's on Jacaranda FM. It's on East Coast Radio. It's in Cockprot 24. I'm sorry, News 24. It's in the Toilet Paper Record, the Independent Online. It's in all these places. Michael, you're just being ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for being here. And thank you for playing along. But stop taking offensive words that are not offensive, okay? If Jack said that Eastern Cape residents were immigrating to the Western Cape, then I can understand your point of taking offense. They can't immigrate. They're South Africans. They're moving around in South Africa. But they do migrate. That's the nature of it. Stop taking offense to things that are not offensive. Because we see what happens. We see physical assaults on members who are elected to council. Anyway, so I just had to get that in there very quickly.
But the problem is it's always a one-way discussion with people who choose to be offended about things which are basic facts. So how racist is Michael against the Cape Coloured people? That's a question I'd like to ask him. How racist is it to actually expect that it's fine to have people coming in here from other parts of South Africa, and even worse, other parts of Africa, who get houses and get social services over and above local Cape Coloureds because they aren't black enough? How racist is that to support economic migration at the expense of the people of Cape Town? That makes me sick.
It's a fair point. Now, Michael, and another comment here. I don't mean to turn this into Michael's show, but Michael, I haven't seen him in a while, and I do appreciate his comments. I didn't want to take offense. He says, no, Chris, you've not lived in South Africa and understand the history and human toll. I think he meant toll. You wouldn't be divisive like Jack Miller. He's a clown. He came to my neighborhood, or my high school in 2012 when he was 1%, and he's still 1%. 1% of what? 1% of what? And he's a clown because he came to your high school? It sounds to me like he was engaging with people. I'm a little confused by that. Okay, that's enough of Michael's comments. I'll see them as they come through, but we're not going to talk about it. I did want to ask you this question, Jack. If you want to respond to Michael, you can. But I did want to ask this question. There's a few small parties in the Cape Town Council. Some we hear more often than others. For instance, Neil de Beer in the UIM. He's very vocal and very colorful when he speaks up there. You've been less colorful, I would say, than Neil de Beer, who's entertaining. But I don't hear much from Fidel Adams and the Cape Colored Congress. I mean, they have 7 seats in the council. Are they quiet, or is the media just not sharing the things that they say in council?
Yeah, it's been quite disappointing, to be honest. Both the Cape Colored Congress as well as the Patriotic Alliance. It's been surprising how we've seen them tack towards the EFF and the ANC on a number of issues. So, I mean, I don't want to talk, too bad about them. The voters are going to have to determine whether the CCC and the Patriotic Alliance are in fact representing, as they claim, Cape-colored citizens and voters. We certainly were hoping to see a little bit more action from them, especially with regards to what we're fighting for, and that is defending the majority population in the Cape Coloreds, from economic migration and things like that. But no, they haven't. They certainly have not. We have not seen them take on a number of these issues the way that they were before the election. So that has been a little bit disappointing.
Well, and that's what I was just curious, because I've certainly seen lots of footage of Neil de Beer calling out things that he sees that are wrong there from the UIM perspective. So I'm going to use this term, okay? I'll use this term, okay? So people moving to the Western Cape, okay? Not economic migrants.
Moving might become a swear word nowadays.
Might be a racist statement because I look like Santa Claus and my skin is pink. So people moving to the Western Cape, if I'm not mistaken, coloreds who've, since the early days of settlement by Europeans in the Western Cape, probably by 1690 already, were the majority of the population probably in that area. I think that's a fair assessment. I have to go back and look at the data, but there's not a lot of data to support that. But anyway, let's just say from 1700 on, coloreds have been the majority of people living in the Western Cape. But now, if I'm not mistaken, they're actually no longer a majority. They're a plurality, down around 49%, because of the movement of people into the Western Cape. I don't want to offend anybody with the economic migration. Oh, I said it again. Gosh, but the movement. Jack, is that accurate, or colored still an actual majority in the Western Cape, population-wise?
Well, look, it depends. I mean, we move between defining the Cape as the Western Cape and then defining it where the way we really see it as the broader Cape, including the Northern Cape, which is very much a colored majority. So, yeah, I mean, the very first governor of the Cape was Simon van der Stel, and many people don't know, but he was a colored man. So the most powerful man in the Cape in the 1600s was a colored man. And so, and the reason the colored population was the largest, and certainly I think broadly in the Cape is the largest, and Afrikaans being the majority language, was because the Dutch and the French intermarried with the Malaysian and the Indonesian, as well as the Khoi and the San, and they didn't have any women coming over with them, the Dutch. So you basically had your very first generation population being mixed race, and so from 1652 onwards, you planted the seeds of what became what we can see in the Cape today. And you're 100% right. In the last 30 years of ANC rule, economic migration into the Cape has begun to really change that demographic outlook. And so for almost 400 years, where you had people of mixed race, a language which you can argue is a mixed language. In fact, it is a mixed language. And it's a beautiful amalgamation of the different peoples, the different cultures, which came from many different parts of the world, to make the Cape what it is today. And this territory is unique. It has its own identity. and its identity spans from Cape Town all the way through to the first point at which the eastwardly moving Boer who were escaping the British made contact with the first Bantu tribes they came into contact with, were the Khoisas there on the Fish River. And so this entire territory for almost 400 years has developed an identity and a characteristic of its own. And at that point, there was also, very interesting, a black tribe called the Fengus that were driven out of KwaZulu-Natal by Shaka Zulu in the Mfecane. This is also why Lesotho came to be, because the Sothos escaped the attacks of the Zulus and fled into the mountains. And Lesotho, as we all know, became independent in 1966. But the Fengu fled down into the Eastern Cape, where they were then oppressed by the Xhosa population. So interestingly, when the British and the Khoi and the San, who'd been driven down by the Xhosas, obviously they were hard done by the loss of their land. So when the British arrived, the Khoi and the San fought alongside the Afrikaners and the British. The Fengu also fought alongside the Khoi and the San, the Afrikaners and the British, in the 100-year wars that spanned from the Fish River moving up to KwaZulu-Natal. So we have a very interesting history, which includes people of all skin colors, which has formed a unique culture, unique language, unique heritage. So there are blacks, whites, browns, Indians, Asians, which call the Cape their home. This has been 4 centuries of this, and we want to preserve this beautiful, beautiful part of the world. And we believe that we can have a rainbow nation, but under the current ANC and Government of National Unity, DA, who's going along with ANC and EFF policies, we basically were facing a very dangerous precipice here. And unless we take serious steps towards either decentralizing towards a federalist system or properly breaking free from the clutches of the ANC, the Cape, as we know it, is under serious threat.
Well, you tell a very interesting recounting of the history. There's one more piece we should add to that, and that, of course, is that the Mfengu were betrayed by the British. They fought alongside the English and the Boers who were there, fighting 9 wars with the Xhosa over the course of decades. And they were promised land, they were granted land, but then the English took it away from them, and they also disarmed them because they feared them as a threat. So the Mfengu were very much betrayed by the British government. So it's a lot of people betrayed. And I would add on Lesotho, it wasn't just the English, it was also the Trek Boers who fought 3 wars with the Basotho. Mishweshwe defeated them from Tabu and Chu up in the mountains. That's how they maintained their independence. Although they did fight the Sotho and the Boers have had a long history of cooperating as well. But that's, anyway, neither here nor there. There's a couple questions in the chat. One that's very interesting, I think, and that is from someone who asked a question about faith. And of course, we know the African Christian Democratic Party, ACDP, is a faith-based party. The Freedom Front Plus is not ashamed of mentioning its faith. Is there a faith-based element to the Cape Independence Party, or simply perhaps just a respect for people who are people of faith?
Absolutely. I think freedom of religion is one of the most important principles. And, going back to talking about the identity of the Cape, some of the first slaves that came over with the Dutch East India Company were Malaysian and Indonesian, who brought with them their faith of Islam. So there's always been a large Muslim community in the Cape, and there's always been a majority Christian community in the Cape. We've got a significant Jewish community in the Cape, and we've got a significant Hindu and Indian community in the Cape. So faith, I think, is very important. It's very important for people in the Cape, and we believe that just like the Bella Act, what's so dangerous about these things is when you take away parents' influence over their children's education, community influence over children's education, you start to break down all of these institutions, and faith is a very important part of a cohesive society. So we don't believe that government should interfere in people's personal faith. It's a personal thing. It's a community thing. But on the flip side, we cannot have the complete opposite, where the government is intentionally trying to destroy people's faith and trying to create policies which make it very difficult for communities to protect faith. So yes, you can certainly say that the Cape Independence Party faith is a very important part of it, and it needs to be protected. And we respect individual freedom in this regard, and we do not want to see one group oppressing another. We need to have freedom of religion, and certainly our vision would be to see people living peacefully, as we have done. Muslims and Christians have lived peacefully side by side in Cape Town for centuries, and there's no reason why that can't continue.
Yeah, and of course, the introduction of Islam came from Indonesia. That's where it came when they brought folks over. That's how it first came there. Then later, you had an infusion of Islam that came from bringing people from the subcontinent in the 19th century to KwaZulu-Natal to cut the sugar cane. And now, in the 21st century, you have an infusion of Islam that's terror-related that's been coming to South Africa for the past few years. You know, it's interesting. You talked about Afrikaans a little while ago. It's the only language in the world with a monument dedicated to the language specifically, a beautiful monument in Parel. And, of course, it comes from a root of Dutch, but it includes influence and loan words and things that came from Asia as well as from Africa. And it is a truly African language, and it's celebrating its 100th anniversary this year, recognized as a language in 1925 in May, while I was there. So pretty interesting stuff there. Nehemiah Frederick says Klaas Sturman and David Sturman are most prominent Khoi leaders in support of the Xhosa and the 100-Year War. Well, I'm not sure about that, but I can tell you that most South Africans have no idea who Klaas Sturman or who David Sturman is, let alone who the Mfengu are, or the Fingo, as they're often called, that we were talking about a few moments ago. South Africa's history has been distorted. It was distorted under the National Party, but it's been distorted far worse under the African National Congress. And I find that most South Africans that I talk to are functionally illiterate if they're under the age of 30 in the history of South Africa. Jack, I think that's a major problem, is that the history of South Africa is being distorted and not being talked about honestly here. It's all ANC all the time. They're the heroes. They saved everybody, and that's a total crock of nonsense. It's really sad to see.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what you said about Afrikaans. I'm not the biggest fan of celebrating 100 years of Afrikaans, because for me, Afrikaans is a much, much older language than that. In fact, Hendrik Bibo was the very first person to declare himself an Afrikaner in 1707 in Stellenbosch. So I think that, yes, it's good. We must acknowledge, I guess, all the stepping stones. And it was the nationalist government that officially recognized Afrikaans at that point. But yes, you know, Afrikaans is central to the Cape identity. It's central to South Africa's history. And what you're saying is entirely correct. When I've had conversations and debates, if you can call them debates, with people in the EFF and ANC, more like the EFF. The EFF is frankly the worst. They've got zero understanding of history. They don't understand the complexities of South Africa, Southern Africa, Central Africa. They've got no respect for the history of the Khoi and the San. And how the Bantu migrations decimated the Khoi and the San as they moved from Central Africa down to Southern Africa. And similarly, the Khoi and the San, how their land was, you know, taken by the settlers too. But, you know, they also intermarried, and that's why we had the colored population. And so it's a complex thing. And history certainly isn't a picture of daisies and rainbows. It's at those times in history, brutal things happened. And you can look at and the history of north of South Africa, like the Imfikane, which was perhaps one of the most violent times in certainly Black African history, and different historical accounts put the death toll of Black South Africans at anywhere from 1 to 2 million at the hands of Shaka Zulu. That was a very serious time in Southern Africa's history, and we need to acknowledge it. The Zulu people are very proud of one of the greatest military leaders that Africa's ever had in Shaka Zulu, and the tribes that felt the wrath of his power and his tactical might obviously hold resentment for that. So, and those that also the British, who committed the first concentration camps against the British people and murdered tens and thousands of women and children. The Afrikaners have got very good reason to hate the British. So there's at a certain point, you just got to accept that history has got brutal chapters in its pages. And if we want to create a world in which our children and our grandchildren and any hope of future civilization is put first and foremost, we've got to start looking at things that are actually going to make our environment better. And racism and believing that you can steal from the productive and promote a social welfare system of of entitlement, based upon hatred of ethnic groups, that you don't need to do anything, you don't need to work, let's just tax one ethnic group into extinction. The amount of people living on SASSA grants. This, let me add another fact here. 10% of South Africa is carrying the other 90%. 10% is carrying 90%. I think it's the worst ratio in the world here in South Africa. So we're not going to build a future for our children or our grandchildren if we continue down this socialist communist path. And we need to remember history's mistakes, learn lessons from that, and build a future in which we can provide an opportunity, a wonderful opportunity, and a pathway to building a prosperous economy, a peaceful society, for our future generations to come. But if we carry on in this route, it's not going to happen. And we don't see the ANC or the DA and the Government of National Unity taking the right pathways towards that. And people are going to have to take that responsibility in their own hands and put an end to EFF ideology, ANC ideology, and frankly, the bending the knee ideology of the DA, which supports that the socialism and communism of those two other parties.
Fascinating watching the comments in the chat. Some loving what you're saying, others trashing what you're saying, back and forth. It says a lot about where people are at in this whole thing. You know, it's fascinating. I've told Afrikaners for years, and I think this kind of opened up a lot of eyes. People didn't realize, because we always get this nonsense, send them back to the Netherlands. Well, Afrikaners are not Dutch. That's not even the single largest DNA contribution to those who are Afrikaans. The majority of Afrikaners actually have more German ancestry than they have Dutch. So it's German, Dutch, French Huguenot, and then, surprise, surprise, some Khoi and San in there for most of you. In fact, one of my viewers the other day found out that she had a significant portion of Khoi and San, and she's white. She's considered white. That's one reason why this racism nonsense is so stupid, you know. And of course, we're always told by black supremacists, Jack, that those unions between the Dutch and Huguenots and the Khoi and San were all forced and rape. But that's not what the letters that come from the women who mated with these folks say. There may have been some of that. There's no doubt that stuff happens everywhere. But people just trashing the memory of people they know nothing about based on a false assumption that pushes their racist narrative is very disheartening. They weren't in those people's shoes. They weren't there back then. And as you said, and I've pointed out many times, of course, Simon van der Stel introduced the viticulture into the region. I know that his predecessor Jan van Riebeck brought the first grapes, but it was actually Simon van der Stel who actually started the first vineyards there, and he was colored. He was mixed race from Asia. Jack, are you still with me, or did you drop off? I think Jack might have dropped off there, folks. He might have lost his phone. Let me take him off the screen and get back to myself there and see if he comes back there. It looks like he may have disappeared there. Anyway, neither here nor there. So I'm sorry if we lost Jack. We were coming up on the top of the hour anyway. We'll see if he gets back. Is he back? Let me see. It says he's there, but I don't see him. Hang on a second. Whoops, that's not what I want, folks. Whoops, what's going on there? Hang on a second. We got... let me get back and see if Jack is back there. No, his camera's off. I think something happened to his phone. All right, well, while he's off there, I'll just keep chat. Oh, he's dropped off. Okay, if he comes back, I'll get him back on. Otherwise, we'll wrap up here shortly. But yeah, people who say these stupid things about people that lived 300, 350 years ago and don't know anything about them, it's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Really sad to see. What's this? I'm not talking about Fangala. That's a mining language. I didn't say that. Oh, someone else is talking about it. History is deep, but slaves. My ancestry history got freedom in 1686. I don't toy about land they had in Hout Bay and Pearl before 1701. I'm with you 100%. Yeah, I don't toy about the land taken from my Irish ancestors or Germans who lost it. Yep. It's a consequence of conflict, unfortunately. It looks like I've lost Jack, folks, but that's okay. Let me go ahead. I want to get to the super chats here before I wrap up then. While Jack is, we'll see if he comes back or not. There were some super chats. I'll address them as best I can. And apologies for not getting to them because we were taking questions from Jack. I was talking to Jack. So let me get to this. Oh, looks like Jack is coming back. Let me see if he's back. I'll let him in. Jack. Oh, he is. There he is. There he is. He changed phones.
Sorry, the power just went out.
Oh, is it load shedding?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, all right. Well, let me just get you back up here. Well, since I promised to take care of something, welcome to South Africa. I did want to address some super chats. There are a couple super chats here. David Fourie gave 100 Rand super chat, said, fight, we got your back, Jack. That's nice. And Enrico Clotti said, I guess the flag behind him will become a hate speech by next week. 140 Rand for that. And then Ben Shepard gave 40 Rand saying, Jack for president, vote Capexit above DA. Okay, well, now I've addressed the super chats. I don't know what you missed, but what I was talking about was the DNA composition of South Africans and why racism is so stupid. And, and people just disparaging and talking nonsense about people came a long time ago. Simon van der Stel, as you said, of course, was colored. He was part Asian, part white, and he was that governor there. And he's also the person who introduced viticulture. I know that Jan van Riebeeck brought grapevines and planted them, but it was Simon van der Stel established the first vineyard, and it really took off from there. And look what we have today. And we have many people who are quite famous and descended and have no problems with being descended from that mix of the early peoples. And one of them we can prove from the very early mix is Peter de Villiers, former Springbok coach. His history is right there in Franschhoek in the French Museum. It shows his entire family tree. He's not alone. Many people. This stupidity needs to end, and people need to accept that Afrikaans, as it developed in the South African context, is South African. It's an African language, and the people are people of South Africa, whether they're white or colored. People need to get over themselves, and that's my thought on that.
Absolutely, and the thing is, this is what we're up against. We're up against a very dangerous ideology. It's an ideology of hatred, vindictiveness, destruction, and theft. It really comes down to that. It's violent. And so the ideology creates a sense of entitlement. It breaks down the self-esteem as well, and it's really wonderful to see the spectrum of people that support us and supports the Cape independence movement. And so that's what's so nice about social media is you meet people you never really would meet under any other circumstances. And so we've actually got a number of black and Xhosa supporters, and so some of the things that you'll hear from those communities who you think would be in favor of ANC policy, because ANC policy is basically saying, the whites are evil and all non-blacks are evil, and we're going to take everything from them and we're going to give it to you for free. And those blacks that can see through that BS and go, you know what? I don't want a free handout. You know what? I can do it myself. Don't belittle me. Don't patronize me. Just give me an equal opportunity. And that's really what we believe Cape independence is about. And to create a society and a country that has got self-respect and pride, and we're all equal before the law. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. Equality before the law, equal opportunity, not equal outcomes, equal opportunity. You all need to have. We can all start the race on an equal footing. How you choose to run your race is how you choose to run your race, and you can't have the government coming in and handcuffing some people and shooting others in the leg and this and that. Let's just work on giving children a good education. Let's work on, for example, like the colored fishing community, the colored communities, when they lost their fishing rights, that absolutely decimated a central part of the economy of the colored community. So we've got to take those fishing rights away from the national government, away from the BEE consortiums, give that back down to the local colored communities. Get an entrepreneurship, an apprenticeship system in place, bring back the apprenticeship system. So when kids get to 18 years old, they're at the same time as studying whatever it is they want to study. They're also learning real life skills that make them economically productive as they get out into the workforce. So you put all of these things in place, you get rid of all the racist policies, and you start to rebuild that economy like Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore. He had different religions, different ethnicities. He had conflicts with neighboring countries, and he took a muddied island from the 1960s to what it is today, one of the highest incomes per capita, lowest unemployment, highest standards of living, just by focusing on economic policies. Didn't care about race, didn't care about anything else, just focused on good economic policies. Didn't blame the British for their colonialism. and their imperial control over Singapore. He just got on with the business and the task at hand, and that was building a good, strong economy, smashing taxes way down low, getting rid of import and export tariffs, allowing people to be productive, creating a good education system. And look at Singapore today. And there's no reason why the Cape can't be like that too.
Well, that's all true, but gosh forbid you throw a cigarette butt on the ground in Singapore. Mr. Fuji will cane your bum. Mr. Fuji will cane your bum. They don't mess around in Singapore, man. They'll come after you. All right, but seriously, Jack, let me put you on the spot here before we wrap up, okay? It can be the Cape. It can be South Africa. What are the three most pressing issues that if you were president or king for a day, what are the three most important policies that you would change in South Africa or in the Cape to affect improvement if you were put in charge tomorrow? Or I'll tell you what, we'll give you till next week. You got a week to think about it, but not here on the broadcast. You get to implement it in a week. Three most important policies that you would change.
Okay, I think that I know from personal experience and friends of mine who've left the country and just engaging with various different communities, doesn't matter which community you engage with, you've got to be able to put your head down on the pillow at night and get a good night's sleep and not worry that a window is going to smash and your parents' lives are in danger or your children's life are in danger or your life is in danger. We have to sort out crime. Crime, I think, is the number one issue. Criminals are running rampant. This new private security bill, PSIRA, is terrifying. It's going to disarm the one most successful security mechanism in this country that keeps criminals at bay. And so we're seeing the national government doing the complete opposite of what they should be doing. So if I had control over the Cape, I would embolden and strengthen neighborhood watches. I think neighborhood watches need to have legal provisions to make them. They should have arresting powers. They should be armed. We should have the police and local communities working hand in hand to capture and jail criminals. We need to change the judiciary, the criminal system, in which people who commit horrific crimes are out on bail for ridiculous amounts of money. Murderers spending a handful of years in prison. I would first reform the judiciary and the criminal system, and I would empower local communities to defend themselves. They need to get armed, and they also need to be able to shoot criminals when criminals are threatening their lives and innocent people's lives. People are too scared to use their firearms because the laws are designed in such a way that makes it very difficult. And police also need to have the freedom to really take criminals out. So I think that's one of the first things that need to happen.
Well, and along those lines, I'll interrupt you for just a second. Oscar Pistorius is not only out of prison after murdering Reva Steenkamp, he's competing in sporting events. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Speaking of murderers getting out ridiculously short terms. But anyway, second thing.
Yeah. This is perhaps the most important. I don't know where you want to put it in your list of three, but economics. It really comes down to economics. And if you can make sure that you don't have this cancerous parasite that's breaking down the productive engine of your communities and your society, then we can begin to expand and develop. So we've got to change the Division of Revenue Act, especially for us here in the Cape. We cannot be paying 320 billion rand in taxes as a province and getting back 75 billion. We just cannot do that. We need to begin moving to keeping the full 320 billion, or even better, let's cut taxes in half. Let's knock taxes down to 150 billion and let's keep all 150 billion ourselves. What we could do with that would be absolutely mind-blowing. So economics, and then the children, education. This is going to take a little bit of time, but we've got to decentralize education. All of this comes down to decentralization, I might add. But you've got to decentralize the education system. We are the absolute antithesis of Bella. We don't want a central government dictating how children should be taught in schools. We think we've got to give those powers to the parents. We've got to decentralize down to local communities. If you live in an Afrikaans community, you should be taught by an Afrikaans teacher, by someone who's from your area, who understands the issues, can teach it in a way and a manner that children can learn most effectively. So the education system, the economics, the taxes that we're losing, and safety and security. Those are the three most important issues, I believe.
Well, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head, and it's interesting. I think, are you like stealing my talking points? You pretty much ran through. You ran through the things that kind of I talk about quite a bit here. And just very quickly, To Be Safe says, "Why'd you get timed out?" You're not timed out. I just saw your message come 30 seconds after the other. There's no such thing as a 30-second timeout. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Yeah, no, that's great, Jack. I mean, those are fantastic points, and the comments here, people really agree with you. They really agree with what you're saying here, dealing with public safety. You got to, and that's the argument I made back in 1994 when I was asked about this as a young man. I was told, people asked me, so what does South Africa need to do? I said, well, South Africa first needs to take the police force, which is very good at protecting the white minority, and turn it into a community policing organization, resource it properly, pay soldiers police a living wage, and have forensics capabilities so they can actually investigate crimes instead of oppressing the majority, which they were very good at, and protecting the minority. Everyone needs protection. That didn't happen. We get the likes of Jackie Salibe, a gangster who becomes the minister of police. Then we've got, the cat in the hat, frickin' Beckett Sile. Geez, give me a break with that guy. I'm not the guarded boy. Dude, I think you might be. Anyway, so then you have fixed community policing. Then you needed to fix education, and instead of fixing education, they took world-class education and removed most of the qualified Afrikaans teachers out of revenge or vengeful hatred, pushed them into retirement or bought them out, pushed them out, and replaced them with unqualified people who happen to be black. If they're qualified people are black, great. If not, be patient. Give it a generation for black folks to grow up with fair opportunity to enter the workspace and have the skills to be teachers, and then they'll be there. And if they'd done that, we'd have a mix of people today. We'd have a much better education system. And instead of being dishonest with the public and lowering the educational standards to 30% to artificially say, well, we got 87% graduates. No, you've got about 12% graduates and about 70% functionally illiterate people who now have expectations that they're owed a job when they can't even read and write. Look at all the accountancy firms in South Africa that have to hire old white retirees to come in and do the accounting because the university graduates are functionally illiterate. So,
Chris, I'm sorry. I think it's important. It's on purpose as well.
Yeah.
Because look at what Mugabe did. One thing, Mugabe did a lot of bad things.
But he fixed education.
One thing Mugabe did very well that you have to give credit where credit is due is he put in place a fantastic education system. There is no excuse for the level of education that we have here in South Africa. And frankly, I think it's on purpose. The ANC wants, particularly the black population, they want the black population dumb so that they can be more easily persuaded by these ridiculous communist, racist agendas. So I agree with you 100%, but I don't think it's a mistake. I think it's on purpose.
No, I don't disagree with that argument, but it is a multifaceted benefit for them. First, one of the benefits is that they can claim that they have higher graduation rates, and people, because people believe statistics. It's kind of like the whole thing with farm murders, because they don't even have a category for that. So a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, you may have heard this story, her mother and her partner were assaulted in their farm near Brits a little over a week ago. They poisoned their dogs couple nights prior. Then they stole the wheels off their bakkies so they couldn't escape. He was wheelchair bound because he had a recent hip operation in his 70s or 80s. They came into the house at 2 o'clock in the morning after planning this attack. They tied them up. Then they beat them senseless with an antique iron that weighs several kilos. And then they left. They took a TV so it could be classified as a robbery, a couple small things. But they didn't take the firearms. They didn't even take the handgun. Then he had to protect himself. When they took it from him, they dropped it on the way out. So it clearly wasn't about robbery. It was about domestic terrorism and intimidating people to chase them off the farms. And so that was categorized. I have a police report, and I've exposed it, which is not me being very unpopular with certain circles in South Africa, in which it's listed as a house robbery. It's not a house robbery. It was a home invasion. It was aggravated assault. It was attempted murder. It was robbery. It was trespassing at a minimum. And it's listed as a house robbery so they can deny. Same sort of thing here with the education. They want to pretend that they've graduated all these people when they haven't. And that serves a purpose for them to get people to ignore statistics by doctoring statistics. So first off, public safety, we agreed on that. Education, we agreed on that. And the last one, which you didn't touch on, but we can have different threes, is in 1994, there's no money for it now, but in 1994, instead of shaking down Anglo-American and Old Mutual and these big conglomerates for equity to hand to Patrice Motsepe, to Cyril Ramaphosa, to Tokyo Sexwale, and to a handful of other connected elites, they should have, if they're going to shake them down, put that into a national sovereign wealth fund, and then from the dividends and capital gains be paying out quarterly or semi-annually or annually, or even monthly if it worked out, to people who below a certain income threshold so they qualified. I don't like that sort of thing. It's progressive, but it would have been fair, and it would have created an ownership society instead of a dependency society. So you get a statement every month that goes, oh, okay, I got 1,000 Rand this month. 200 came from, Sasol. They're doing well. Okay, I want them to do well. And this came from here. But instead, we've got a dependency society. So I think that we pretty much agree on the broad strokes here. So, Jack, I don't know if you want to respond to anything I just said. You respond to one thing. I'll give you a chance for that, and then I'm going to give you a chance to wrap up afterwards. But any comments on the things I just said?
Yeah, I mean, it just breaks my heart every time, people recount some of these attacks on elderly. I mean, who do you have a soul? Do you have a soul when you can break into someone's home, someone's in their 70s and 80s, so feeble, so fragile, so innocent? Like, I mean, it's like how people do those types of things. It's sick. It's absolutely sick. So I'd like to touch a little bit, just briefly. It's something I brought up quite a bit in recent weeks, but because it's been so topical, it's been going on for decades. But thank you to the American administration for bringing attention to it. But farm murders, and when I'm asked this question, I don't hesitate. Let's look at the ethnic group that we're talking about here. You've got the EFF singing "Kill the Boer." Now, what is a Boer? A Boer is a white Afrikaans farmer. In 1994, we had 60,000 white Afrikaans farmers. Today, 30 years later, we have 30,000 white Afrikaans farmers. So that population has been cut in half. We've lost 50% of white Afrikaans farmers in a 30-year period. I've quoted the number 3,000. There are many people telling me that it's over 4,000. But let's go with a lower number. 3,000 farm murders in the last 3 decades on a population that's currently sitting at 30,000. That's 10% of this specific group that has been not just killed, bullet in the head, steal the tractor. They have been tortured for hours, women, children, elderly, in the most horrific ways. And if this continues in another 30 years, it's going to go from 60 to 30 to 0. Now, you go to a website called, and an organization called Genocide Watch, and they list there through the different stages of genocide. How bad does it need to get before people say, okay, this kind of looks like a genocide? And there's someone, Donnie Barnard on Twitter X, who did a fantastic thing. He posed a question saying, hypothetically, and he asked, I think, 6 of the main AI entities, saying, okay, hypothetically, you've got a population of 2 million. Within that population of 2 million, and this 2 million there are chants against this group. There are 142 race laws against this group. And of that 2 million, there's a specific group which makes up 30,000. 3,000 of those have been murdered in the last 3 decades. What would you classify it? And every single one of those AIs, Grok, Claude, Gemini, etc., all said this would be categorized as genocide. And you then ask the AI, okay, we're talking about white Afrikaans farmers, Boere. Oh, well, now it's complicated and this and that. There are other factors that you need to take into account. But if you just look at the facts for what they are, that's what it is. That's what it is. And even if you're sitting somewhere on the other side of the fence and you go, okay, well, no, it's not a Boer genocide. The fact that we are at this point in South Africa, that we're debating, is it a genocide or is it not a genocide? Is this the level that we've come to, that we're fine-tuning that argument? The best that South Africa can do, the South African government, say, no, the murders are so bad here, but it's not really a genocide. This country is absolutely done. If we've reached this point in dialogue, it's absolutely done. And the sooner people realize it, the better. And we've got to cut ourselves free from this mess.
Well, whatever the case is, Donald Trump issued an executive order to avert a genocide. That was the purpose of his executive order, to avert one. Whether there's one underway or not really isn't germane. The bottom line here, because this is the counter-argument nonsense we get from Cyril Ramaphosa and from the NEC and from all these hate wankers who wear condoms on their head and have radio shows in South Africa, these retards, they mentally retarded fools. Anyway, but, the argument that they come up with is absolutely ridiculous here. We're talking about an awful lot of people that have been taken out here. And this is to avert a genocide. And the executive order, we hear them all say, yes, but everybody's a victim of crime. The executive order isn't about crime. Yes, but everybody, no, it isn't about everybody. The executive order is very clear. It was designed for Afrikaners suffering unjust racial discrimination. Not farm attacks, not farmers, not white people, because I classify some other folks as Afrikaner, colored, and some black. But the bottom line, as I predicted, is that this refugee program would be for Afrikaners and racial minorities, and that's exactly what it's for. But they can't bring themselves to admit that it's not about farm attacks. It's not about crime and home invasion. It's about unjust racial discrimination. That's why Trump signed the order, and that's the bottom line. He wants to avert this from becoming a reality, whether it is one or not. And if it was just about farmers, then the order would have been specifically about farmers. But that's not what the executive order is about, and that's not what the program is about. The program is about any racial minority suffering unjust discrimination, and that's the bottom line. But they can't bring themselves to tell the truth. They lie every time, whether it's Peter Dutoy, Adrian Basson, or all the hate wankers over at the Toilet Paper Record, also known as the Independent Online, Cop Prot 24. It's just ridiculous. Jack, I've got to wrap up because I've got to run and take care of a few other things. So I'm going to give you a chance to give any final thoughts you might want to share with people about what's going on, the future, maybe bring some people to your standard, help your party, whatever you want to say. The floor is yours, and I'll give you a chance to wrap up.
Yeah, Chris, I just want to say that it's always fantastic chatting to you. I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you do for South Africa, for us here in the Cape. You've been a shining bastion that's been bringing attention to our plight for a long, long time. You're an amazing person, amazing human being, and I personally am incredibly grateful for everything that you do. And I know that I speak on behalf of a lot of people here who greatly respect all your work. So can you please keep it up? We need you. We were incredibly grateful for you. On our side, if anyone wants to find out more about the Cape Independence Movement, please check out our website at www.capexitparty.com. Send us an email at capexitparty.com. We've got a very exciting year coming up next year. We're building up towards the elections, and we appreciate all your support. So thank you so much.
Well, Jack, it's very kind of the nice words you said about me, and I appreciate it. There'll be an extra 200 Rand in your next envelope. But I have to break your heart. I can't vote for the party. I apologize. No matter how many nice things you say about me, I can't vote for your party or any party in South Africa. Although there are the Nigerians in Joburg who tell me there's a way I can vote next time. So I don't know. I could check into that. Just saying. Anyway, but Jack Miller from the Cape Independence Party, thank you so much. Be careful when you utter those slurs, man. That economic migrant thing is a dangerous phrase. Be careful out there.
That M word.
All righty. Jack Miller, I'll let you drop off and then I'll wrap up here. All right, there he goes. Jack Miller from the Cape Independence Party, folks. He came back to us despite the load shedding that knocked him offline for a couple minutes. Thanks for coming in. I hope you found this informative and useful. Folks, look, you don't have to agree with what was said, but you don't have to be snarky in the chat. Some people are being snarky. And a lot of comments coming in. I had to wait to a point where I could get to the point to ask Jack about his 3 policy positions that were most important. And I think his answer was pretty good. And I think if you give him a fair chance, you'll see that worked well. Okay. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today. I'm wrapped up unless something breaks. I've got to run some errands. And I've got to also go on to my Rugby Ascended channel and set up tomorrow's Bulls and Sharks game at Loftus Versfeld. All right, predictions? Haha. Bulls win the game. There you go, folks. All right, thank you all so much. God bless and have a good evening. Check out my other videos. Put up 3 today, so I hope you find them informative. Cheers, everybody. Thank you very much, Jack Miller, for your time. Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Well, that didn't work out. What happened there? How did that wind up here? We'll fix that now. There you go. Now we can do it.